Hello and welcome to my FlossTube channel. I'm Jean Farish and I'm so glad that you're here today. In fact, I can also add that I'm thankful that you're here today. This has been a week of Thanksgiving here in the States, and I don't know about you, but I've eaten my share of pie and not a little whipped cream as well. So I hope that wherever you are and however you celebrate, that you have enjoyed this week and have taken the time to stop and think about the things that you're grateful for and thankful for. So I had a big design inspiration a couple of weeks ago. Those of you who follow me on Facebook know that I had a kind of a technology challenge with my design software. And once I got that straightened out, it ended up being a very, very small and easy fix. Just didn't know how to do it. This happens sometimes when I update my operating system, then things like my software needs a little tweaking to go along with that. So anyway, once I got that figured out, what I did was I finished my newest in the series of circular samplers celebrating Christmas. Now the first one was Hearts Come Home for Christmas. Hearts Come Home at Christmas. And then last year I added Peace on Earth. And this year I have simply the greeting of Merry Christmas. So this is the third in the series, and it is a design done completely in cross stitch. There's not even any back stitch. So those of you who stitch on Aida will be able to stitch it, as well as those who stitch on even weave or linen. It's using the same colors as used in Peace on Earth and When Hearts Come Home at Christmas. So if you already got the floss for those designs, you have it in your stash. Now I have used the color code for both Cosmo and DMC. So whichever one you used in the past, you're good to go. There are not a lot of stitches in any one color in these designs. So I would be really surprised if you don't have enough yardage to be able to stitch this one as well. I haven't done the math yet. I need to do that to see whether or not, if you are stitching all three in the series, whether or not one set of floss will work for all three. But I'll figure that out. So this is what I'm going to consider a design in progress. I know a lot of designers will produce and sell their charts based strictly on a schematic like I have right now, what I'm showing you now. I prefer to launch my designs when I actually have it stitched. There are too many times I have made very subtle, but what I thought were important design changes once I start stitching. So for that reason, this week, because I haven't stitched enough of it to do my color check, I'm going to introduce it at half price. So if you go to my Etsy store and you look for Merry Christmas, you will see it, and it will be priced at $5. Once I figure out my design changes and have all the tweaks done, and I'm happy with it, then I will launch it at the regular price of $10. And I expect to do that. I expect to do it by December 3rd. So let me just make the commitment to you that I will keep it at the $5 through December 3rd. And then as of the 4th, it will go up to the $10. So you can save yourself a few dollars in that regard. Now, if you have only ever stitched on Aida, I would say that this is a good design to take those steps into stitching with even weave or linen, if you're so inclined, because there are not a lot of color changes. There's not, you don't have that confetti thing to deal with. So I think that it's pretty easy. You can stitch it with 2 strands of floss on anything from 14 stitches at the edge, up to 15 or 16 stitches at the edge anyway. And maybe I would say even 18. And that means that you can use the loop start, which makes it easy. So I would really encourage you to use this one for that stepping off, again, if you're so inclined. If not, the design works up beautifully on Aida as well. Now, I still have my tutorial for Hearts Come Home at Christmas right here in my YouTube channel, in my FlossTube channel. If you search for it, you will find it. And there are 7 in the series that I take you absolutely step by step as I stitch that design. So even if you don't like that one and you want to start with this one, you could watch that and it will give you some tips, especially, for example, stitching the checkerboard, the way the grass is under the house in kind of a checkerboard fashion, and just a few little stitching tips as you go along. But if you haven't stitched When Hearts Come Home at Christmas, I would really encourage you to start with that one as well. Now, I know that it's late in the season to be introducing a Christmas design. And you may remember when I started Peace on Earth, I decided that I would start stitching a Christmas design on December 1st each year. I'm cheating just a little bit starting in November because, again, I want to get my color check done. But think of this. We all need to start stitching for Christmas early in the year. If you wait to stitch your Christmas decorations and ornaments in December, you'll never get them done. So yes, we definitely stitch all year long for Christmas. But I think there's something really special about stitching a Christmas design during the season, so that I'm both celebrating and thinking of and getting in the spirit of that holiday season all at the same time. So if you'd like to join me, do that. I'm not going to do any Zooms or set up a stitch along or whatever. Just know in your heart that I'm stitching this while you are. And we'll share our progress with each other as we're going along. And we can simply use the hashtag of Merry Christmas, which I know is going to be used for a zillion other things. But right now, I can't think of anything better than that. So let me think what else I need to tell you about this. Oh, I did think of one more thing. When you compare the 3 designs, you'll see a lot of the same motifs repeated in them. And I've done that quite deliberately so that if you want to display them together, they will have kind of a cohesiveness or a kind of a theme or trend that goes through all of them. Those of you who love music, I do, I'm just not very good at it, know that the same thing happens if you're listening to music. There'll be themes and phrases and whatnot that get repeated. And so I've done the same thing here. In terms of stitch count, it's the same size as the other 2. So if you're stitching them all 3 on the same type of fabric or the same number of stitches per inch, they'll end up being the same size. So I hope that you'll join me in stitching this one. And again, just until December 3rd this year, 2021, will that design be at half price in my Etsy store. So go take a look. Now, I wrote myself a great big note to remind you to subscribe. I am so close to having 10,000 subscribers, which just thrills me and pleases me and surprises me. I mean, I remember when I first started this and I had like 200 people watching it. I'm like, wow, 200 people are watching this. And I'm just so thrilled that it has taken on kind of a life of its own, it seems at times. But I'm just so glad that people are enjoying what it is that I have to offer. And as long as you're out there watching, I'll keep making these. And so one of the ways that it helps me know who's out there is to subscribe. And I think if you do it a certain way, then you also get notifications that when new episodes come up. I'm still learning how YouTube works. So some of you probably know a whole lot more about it than I do. And if so, please send me a message and educate me. Very quickly, I want to share with you the projects that are going to be included on the Hawaii cruise, which is next September 2022. Now this one is organized by RGE Travels, a wonderful travel agency down in Florida, owned by two great guys, Ray and John, and they're taking care of the cruise aspects of this. I'm coming along as a teacher, and I'm also kind of acting as kind of head teacher as far as working with the other 3 teachers that are coming on this cruise. So it's Tony Gerdes and Kathy Reese, who will both be teaching needlepoint techniques, and Terry Bay and I, who will both be teaching counted thread techniques. So I thought I would give you just a quick rundown of the projects that are going to be taught on the 5 sea days that we have. Now, if you're new to cruising, you have port days where you actually arrive someplace and you get off the ship and you go around and you see all kinds of wonderful things and taste all kinds of wonderful food and enjoy yourself, and then you get back on the ship and you go someplace else. But to get from Vancouver, British Columbia, where we're starting, to the Hawaiian Islands, we have 5 days at sea. And so when Ray and John first started talking with me about this, I said, that's a great opportunity to have classes. If we have 5 days and 2 classrooms, then you can easily have 4 teachers and keep us all busy and come up with wonderful designs. So let me start with the needlepoint. Tony Gerdes is teaching a project called Mermaid Moon. And as you can see, one of the wonderful, surprising, charming features of this is how she has stitched the hair of the mermaid. There's also other techniques that are going to be taught, but I am just enchanted by this mermaid. Kathy Reese is known for her counted canvas pieces, and so she has come up with a brand new project called Confetti, and she's used all these wonderful tropical colors. Tony and Kathy have collaborated to teach yet another class. This one will be a 1-day class, and this one is called Flip Flops, and they both jointly designed it and will be jointly teaching it. I should also say that Mermaid Moon and Confetti are both 2-day classes. So if you signed up for either one of those, you would be in class with that teacher for 2 days. And then the flip-flop class is 1 day. So that kind of fills the 5 days of one of the classrooms. The other classroom will be inhabited by me and Terry Bay. And Terry is teaching 3 incredible projects. Terry is known for coming up with charming designs that are based on Ukrainian work and hardanger and other traditional forms of needlework. So she has this one called Lotus Drop, which is not only just a really exquisite design, but the way she puts it together is amazing. And for those of you who have done her Lotus boxes before, it's basically, as I understand it, the same idea, except by hanging it, it becomes a drop rather than a box. And she's teaching a project called Anne, which is based on some Ukrainian white work. And her 3rd project is Hawaii Snowflake, which I think is just wonderful how she takes a hardanger idea and she has a whole series of snowflakes and gives it a tropical twist. I'm going to be teaching 2 1-day classes. I'm going to teach Gracious Words, which is primarily cross-stitch with some introduction to stump work. And I'll be teaching Lady Elizabeth's Garden, which is a little bit of cross-stitch and a whole lot of white work. So if you're interested in learning pulled thread, that would be a good class for you. So that pretty much just wraps that up. I wanted to share it here because I'm not really sure where you're going to be able to see the images online, except for on Facebook. Now, I've posted it in several counted cross-stitch groups as well as needlepoint groups and in stitching events. But that's a little hit or miss. So if you belong to any of those groups, you'll see them. And if you are interested in getting the cruise information, but you don't see it anywhere, please feel free to drop me an email. That's much better than leaving me a message here on the FlossTube comments, because it's too easy for me to miss them. I do try to read and respond to them, but I'll just tell you, with the holidays coming, I'm just I can't be sure that I will see everything. So send me an email if you're interested in getting information about the cruise. But I will also put some links in the episode description so you can go right now and find the details about the cruise as far as the dates and the cost and everything. And also there'll be a link for how you can book it. Now, in order to take these classes, you have to book it through RGE Travels. You can't use another travel agency. That just won't work with the way that we have things set up. So I would love to be able to meet more and more of you in my classes. I've already had the opportunity to meet some of my FlossTube viewers in some of my classes, and that's just always special for me. Okay, I'm gonna finish with an FAQ. This one came from Lee, and she actually posted it, oh golly, a couple of weeks, it may have even been a month ago. And she just said, cross-stitch was the first hobby I dove into and was taught by a friend, and this was 30 plus years ago. I've not stitched in a while. She got into quilting, but still have all my supplies. A beginner question, and I apologize if it's probably such a remedial question. You and others I have started following will say stitched over 2. Is that over 2 threads, or is it over 1 square as I was taught? When and why would we ever stitch over 1 thread or over more than 2? Thank you for your time and energy. So my response to her, first of all, was a welcome back to the world of cross stitch, and to tell her that the term of over 2 only applies when you're stitching on linen or even weave. More and more, I'm seeing people use the term when they are clearly stitching on Aida, and it just is not appropriate. When you stitch on Aida, 1 Aida square equals 1 square on the chart, and that's that. When you're stitching on linen or even weave, and you're stitching over 2, then as Lee said, you're stitching 2 threads wide and 2 threads high. I just did that backwards. You're stitching 2 threads high and 2 threads wide. Okay. Now, so that applies if you're stitching on linen or even weave. And yes, there are people who stitch on linen and even weave over 1. So every single little intersection is getting a little teeny tiny cross stitch. Now, can you stitch over more than 2? And the answer to that is yes, you can. Traditionally, it's not done. But if for some reason you were stitching with a certain size fabric and a certain count, but you wanted it to be bigger, then yes, you could stitch over 3 or over 4, and it would just blow up. It would just get bigger and bigger with the more threads you're covering on your stitching. Now, I'm not necessarily advocating that, because that brings in a whole new set of challenges in terms of stitching cross stitch. If somebody wanted something larger, which I have done in the past, like my weather vane horse I have mentioned before, I stitched on Floba, which is 19 threads to the inch. So it ends up being less than 10 stitches to the inch. And so it just is bigger, and therefore became like a focal point where I was hanging it in my living room. So I hope that answers Lee's question and helps all of you understand a little bit more with the lingo of when it's appropriate to talk about stitching over 2 and what it means, and kind of what it entails. So I think that that's a wrap. This has been the week to count blessings. I've been counting stitches, but I have not been counting calories. And I have enjoyed the food and fellowship with friends and family, and I hope that you have too. So wherever you are, I hope that you stitch happy and stay safe, and I'll see you next week.